Whoa.
Right, we have.
I'll have to start buying some special lighting.
Yeah, can I get a ring light, please?
I have a ring light in my office, but it's not that nice. I got it from Home Goods. It like has a little thing that you can put your phone in.
Huh. I'll have to get one for up here. Or
Yeah.
Some
Good
studio lighting.
afternoon. I'm like,
You can use the Zoom functions to touch up your
Filter?
appearance.
Yeah.
oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's,
Blurs you
we
out.
don't want to do that.
No.
That's too much.
Lydia would like Tony to be included on the May 7th meeting. The ED. Oh, okay.
Good
Yeah, I
afternoon.
know.
We're just waiting. We can't hear.
We can. Oh, we just need volume.
Oh, is that?
Oh, well,
Hold on 1 second. I hit remote. Where did it go? I had a TV. I had two remotes here.
We can hear you.
Oh, it's up there.
Why isn't it?
I read.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Hold on 1 second.
I don't know.
Let's see here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, is that Tony?
Yes, yeah. I am.
I can hear you.
Okay, we have sound.
Good.
So it's working. Our sound is working. See if Troy. See if we can. Rat, can you try to say something?
Or Ann?
Hi, good afternoon.
Okay, they can hear. Okay, you
And
guys
Zoom
can
is
hear us,
picking
but
up
we
on their
can't hear
audio.
you.
Is there a
No.
Hold on,
speaker?
hold on. Let me
We can hear you, but you can't hear us.
We're sorry, everyone. I know your time is
Yeah,
precious.
So, Ann,
And I thought it was me.
All right, we're good now. We got you. Okay. We're just waiting a second for Jay. He's was going to be a few minutes late. This is why we pushed it back a few minutes. He's technically the chair of the committee. Can I let Joe in? Yes. He let me. I'm just writing everybody.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Joe.
Hi,
hi,
Joe.
Joe.
Hey, Joe.
How's everybody doing today?
Good.
Good, Joe.
Right. How about you?
You know, I'd be doing better if it stopped raining, but that's okay.
It's spring in Rochester.
Right? Right, Ann? Exactly. You're right.
Do we
You're
have
not looking for snow, are you?
No, please don't even say the S word in my presence. Please don't say that word.
Do we have representatives from the city joining us for this call for the choice program, or is this just
Oh, Anne,
for
thank you
us?
for the question. We're just going to have a refresh, sharing the presentation that they delivered to
Perfect.
us at a recent board meeting, and going to have an internal discussion amongst the governance committee about how we would like to respond to the city.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just checking.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Hi,
Hi,
Jay.
Jay.
Thanks
Okay.
for accommodating a little delayed start here. I do appreciate it. So I see Joe. Tony, is that you on the phone?
Yes.
All right, very good. Rhett, Troy, Ann, good to have you guys as well. So
There's
All
someone
right.
else on, there's someone else on the phone?
That's Rhett.
No,
That's me.
Rhett's on video.
so who's,
Reps on both.
yeah, who's the last four digits are 8462?
That'd be Red.
That's Rhett.
Oh,
Okay. And
so you're doing double dosing there.
yeah, Tony, you're 3086, right?
Correct.
All right. Thanks, Ann.
Mhm.
So Rachel, Anna, if there's no objection, should I call the meeting to order and we'll get started?
Yes, please go right ahead.
All right. First item is approval of our minutes from our March 16th meeting. Has everyone had a chance to look at them, and are there any modifications? If not, could I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Joe. Second.
Tony seconds.
Thank you, Tony. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, our minutes are approved. The next item is an update of the choice program. Anna, is that something you'll be walking us through?
Yes, thank you, Jay. There's a PowerPoint presentation in your packet materials. The PowerPoint slide, it's titled Choice Pilot and Scattered Site Residential New Construction. This was the presentation shared with this committee at our most recent convening. And today's conversation is to go about how do we want to respond. So following up on the presentation by Gary Kirkmeyer, the Commissioner of Neighborhood and Business Development for the City of Rochester regarding the expansion of the Choice Program, asking us to make the program available to scattered, non-contiguous sites. Staff reviewed that proposal and we are okay with that request to make Choice available to scattered, non-contiguous sites based on the value proposition that this will help revitalize neighborhoods throughout the city and address concentrated poverty. However, we are not in agreement, we're not supportive of the request to reduce the COMIDA fee from 0.75% to 0.25% on these projects, or to eliminate the COMIDA attorney's involvement in the transactions. We felt that those requests were unsuitable. And with that, I'd like to open it up to conversation.
How much would those fees add to a typical project here?
Rachel, could you address that question?
Sure. So the agency fee is 0.25%. I would say that the projects are 0.75%. I would say that the projects range anywhere between 2 million to 7 million. They're in contrast with our other projects, I would consider them smaller. So the fee on that for the IDA, let's just say a $5 million project, would be, I can't do that kind of math in my head. To the agency.
37.5?
Yep. And then
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the
on
answer.
that size of a project, the legal fee could be up to $12,000. But typically they're much smaller. That we actually apply the minimum legal fee to do the straight lease and the pilot agreement. So it's a minimum of a $4,000 fee for legal, and the agency fee is regardless of the project size is the 0.75%. And the administration of these pilots by staff and legal is ongoing because each time the property is transferred to a new homeowner, the pilot agreement transfers as well. So it requires an amendment to the documents, usually several times throughout the course of the 10-year pilot. And then for staff, the state reporting is onerous to say the least, because there are pilots on each individual unit that get individual bills. So when staff does the parish report, they have to create a spreadsheet containing all the projects, figure out what the aggregate property tax exemption is, what would be paid in the aggregate in all the units, and report that to the state. So it is a much more difficult pilot to report on and administer than our standard pilot. So upon review, felt that the fees were appropriate.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that. I imagine with these scattered lots, we're going to see smaller project sizes as well. So this is what a minimum of 3 or more houses. So, you know, if we're looking at something much smaller, like $500,000, you're only talking, you know, $3,000-4,000. So I think I don't have a problem keeping our fees as they are. Any comments or from the rest of the board members and Rhett and you guys have any thoughts?
What would be, well, on the fee issue, I agree with what staff is recommending. On there are a couple other questions I had about the non-contiguous properties. Would they require the same owner or different owners? But what, are they all being built by one developer or rehab? But, you know, I don't quite understand that.
Rachel can go into more detail here as to our administrative oversight of the program, but yeah, it would be one single developer developing multiple sites in scattered locations. If we were to have individual developers trying to do pilots on individual scattered sites, that would be extraordinarily complicated and onerous and questionable from a legal standpoint.
But it's the developer that's applying for the benefits, not the homeowners.
Correct.
And they are different. They can be different homeowners, so they don't all have to be one homeowner for 3 different sites.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions or thoughts? Any objections to the recommendation of keeping our fee and the attorney's fee as they are?
I do have a question, Jay. It's just Troy. I kind of remember on the presentation from Choice that there was going to be multiple developers and each developer had to commit to a certain amount. That changed from the presentation that we had.
Anna, you want to take that?
Sure. We had negotiated with the city, with Gary Kirkmeyer and his team, and conveyed that from our perspective, individual developers on the individual properties would make this program, this proposal problematic for us on an operational standpoint. And so we agreed upon a model whereby one developer would come to us for through the choice program for multiple scattered sites. Rachel, can you chime in? Am I missing anything?
I asked that specific question when I spoke to corporation counsel for the city to make sure that I understood that it would be a developer who was doing multiple projects on either scattered or non-contiguous sites. And his answer to me was, yes, it would be one developer and he might have 3 different sites that are scattered and non-contiguous.
Yeah. Troy, my understanding is, and I think it's a good question, is let's say, we'll make this up. Let's say there's 6,000 sites and they're all scattered. We could have multiple developers, but the developers have to take on at least 3 sites. So you could have developer A take on 10 sites, developer B comes along, takes on 32 sites, and developer C comes along and takes on 3 sites. So is anything I said there, Rachel, Anna, incorrect? So, you know, the idea is to get these scattered sites, you know, basically to put homeowners and build and put homeowners there. So but to avoid the onesie twosies, a developer has to commit to at least 3.
Jay, a quick question, and maybe I read it wrong. I thought it was the 3 of them needed to be next to each other. Is that incorrect?
That's the way I read this, that this allows non-contiguous parcels to be lumped together. And I'll ask Rachel and
I
Anna to confirm that.
3 or more houses for homeownership on scattered, non-contiguous sites.
I think that's what they're asking for.
Yeah.
Yep. So it would be,
Right.
They could be 3 in one neighborhood. They could be three in 3 separate neighborhoods.
Right.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Do the other attachments, option 1 and 2, are they in support of this change and how we would administer it, or is that a separate issue? The housing incentives.
I'm sorry, Ann.
There were 2 other attachments to the meeting materials for housing incentives, option 1 and option 2.
I think that's our next topic.
Okay, it's not part of this discussion.
Yeah,
Okay.
it might tie into a broader discussion, but I guess are there any questions on the choice program update? And then Anna, Rachel, is there any action we need to take? Do we need to?
No action is required at this time. If we're all in agreement that we're okay with scattered sites and we would like to keep our fee structure the same, we will convey that to Gary Meyer.
Okay. All right. All right. Moving on to the next topic, which would be discussing this is a more general discussion of COMIDA housing incentives. And this is something that's near and dear to me. So Anna, I think you guys have outlined some options. Do you want to walk us through this, or do you want me to give a background, or do you want to give a quick background and we can
I can
some of the details here?
Absolutely. I'll start by saying that the county executive would like to call upon COMIDA in his State of the County address next month to request reforms such as these. And so he has asked me to see that this committee discusses these possibilities and goes further and discusses other options. And then we'll wait to make a recommendation to the full board until after we hear from the county executive on his preferences. All of these options that Rachel worked on with Robin, I will also share with the county executive. And again, these are just options. We could go further. We're going to talk about housing first, and then we're going to talk about local labor, which is why we're glad to have Troy with us. So with that, has everyone on this call had an opportunity to review the various options laid out in your packet materials? Excellent.
Yeah.
I have, yeah.
How much of these options are already in state statute, or are even our policies, if you will, for housing, or is this all new?
These are not in the state statutes, but as you all know, IDA law is written with sufficient gray area such that every county, every community that has an IDA has varying degrees of stringency or lack thereof in different policies. For instance, many of our other counties do not have 100% local labor policies. They might not have them at all in some locations. So with that, I'd love to give Rachel the opportunity to kind of share the high level bullet points. And then we can go into a discussion. And I want to be sensitive to everyone's time. I know Joe has to jump off right at noon, or right at 1, excuse me. So with that, Rachel, do you mind
Sure.
talking about housing? Great.
So what we did here is, and as you point out, and Anna accurately said, there is not specifics around housing in the Article 18A of the General Municipal Law, which is the body of law that governs IDAs. Housing is considered commercial projects, and it falls into that broad category. So hearing the call from this committee, we did a survey of I think every IDA in the state, and took a look at what each IDA had for its policies on housing, and took out of that survey what we thought might be useful for this board to start to look at, starting with a very basic option that asks a series of questions that would can be used in a scoring manner. And that's more evident in option 2, which applies actual points to criteria and then dictates the incentive that a project could receive based on the number of points it receives in the evaluation criteria. So as it says, the option 1 is the most fluid and provides the most flexibility, where the board could just say, if it checks a certain number of boxes, it qualifies, or these are the criteria that we look for. And it would not be bound to a specific benefit if it didn't check a certain number of boxes. Whereas the second option allows us to assign points to the criteria and then say, if it gets a certain number of points or above, it gets our standard jobs plus pilot agreement. And then if it checks below, it would either not qualify or get a less a pilot schedule that mirrors what's known as 485B of the property tax law. So we borrowed that abatement schedule as a good incentive, but not as rich of an incentive as our jobs plus pilot.
Thanks, Rachel. I guess I'll start off with just my couple comments. The first thing I'll talk about is just the option 1 versus option 2 in terms of, does it check a box, or do we have some sort of point system? I personally like the idea of having point systems because it allows us to put relative weightings to things that we consider more important. And I'm going to get into, for illustrative purposes, some of my values. Like, for instance, if there's an affordable set aside of 20%, I think that should be weighted much higher than, is it part of, a mixed use development. Like the ones that I look at is the project built in a blighted area and the set aside of 20% for affordable housing. Those are things that I look at and say, I would want to weight those higher than some of the other criteria. And I think it's easier for us if we get to a certain point, if it gets a passing grade. When I was in high school, 65 was a passing grade. If you get 65 points, you've crossed a hurdle. I think that makes judging things a little bit easier, and also allows us to tell the applicant what we consider to be more important to us as we look at housing. And then I guess I'll ask for other people's comments on, a point system versus just a check the box system, and then we can get into specific criteria. Anyone else have some thoughts there? Disagree with what I said?
I think it's a good idea,
Yeah.
because then it takes decision making away from us. Just numerically, here it checks the box. Here's where we are on that. I think that's a good recommendation.
Yeah, and I'll say it a different way. I think it gives more transparency to the applicant.
Yes. I agree.
It's a good idea, Jay.
Okay,
So any
yeah, Jay,
thoughts?
that makes sense, Jay. Makes sense.
Okay. The second thought is the second topic that I would talk about is what are the criteria? To me, as I look at housing, I look at this like I'll look at items 2 and 3 here, or I and triple I. Is it fulfilling an unmet need, or is there a demand for housing? To me, those things are a little less important because, let's say that, someone here, we got some smart person who creates the next Microsoft. And all of a sudden, we've got this booming company that's, putting in 10, 20,000 jobs. We're going to have more housing, and I think there's going to be need for more housing, and I think that's great. It could be fairly expensive housing. I think the fact that there's a unmet need or a demand isn't necessarily a criteria we should look at. I think the filter I always use is there, is this doing some sort of, is there a public benefit here? Like, affordable housing, I think we all agree, or, it's pretty well documented that there's a shortage of affordable housing and we want to deconcentrate poverty. I think VI, when we say, does it create walkable neighborhoods and communities? I would kind of open that up and say, is there another public benefit that this housing project does? For instance, if somebody decides to put up, some housing in the city, and they decide to create a public open space as part of it, that is not just accessible to their residents, but accessible to the public. And, I think that should factor in. Those are the principles that I would encourage us to weigh heavily on. But the fact that there's a market need, if there's a market need, great. That's what we have a market for, and people will come in and fulfill that need.
I would put a criteria if it's on a bus route.
Yeah. That's a good one, Tony. I like that.
I think in our retail policies, we have something like, it's not blighted area, but it's an underserved area in terms of economically, that it's within that area or adjacent to, so like the city of Rochester is huge, so Brighton is adjacent to the city of Rochester.
Yeah.
That we've had issues around that fits with the current criteria, but how realistic is that?
And that's a great point. I mean, I personally think the reason this board should exist is to provide some of our local knowledge. Like, when we look and we say the entire city is a distressed area, and you go contiguous to that, you bring up a great point. There are neighborhoods contiguous to the city of Rochester that are far from distressed. Matter of fact, they fit in the other end of the spectrum. And so I think using something like, is it being built in a blighted area, allows us discretion. We can go and we can go take a look. If the northwest city of, the northwest portion of Rochester, I think we'd all agree. If we look and say someone's building something on East Avenue, I think we'd have a few board members that would look and say, I don't think that's a blighted area. While I know that's not as transparent or as objective, I think there is certain items where we as the board need to have discretion and need to provide judgment. This is why we have people locally who know the area and to be able to provide some of those insights. So I'm okay with a little bit of a vagary there of just calling it a blighted area. If we want to use a different term, that's okay. But is it a distressed area? But we can get away from looking strictly at a census tract. I think we ought to, we ought to exercise some judgment there.
Right.
So, So I guess, Rhett, Troy, Tony, Joe, you guys have any thoughts?
I mean, I'll say this to you, Jay. I think anytime we look at any project, especially multifamily, which is profitable, if someone comes to the county and says, hey, we want to develop something in an area that without our help would not be developed, or they're going to be developing in an area that is struggling economically, or it's just the area itself has been run down, or a combination of those, which is usually the case, then I'm in full support of doing that. Again, if I come to the board and say, and I'm not on the board, and I come to the board and say, hey, I'm going to build some apartments on East Avenue, and I don't care where it is on East Avenue. I own apartments on East Avenue. I don't need county money. So, I own apartments in Pittsford. I would not come for county money. And I look at across my whole portfolio. I never have, nor would I ask for IDA money, because it's just unnecessary. The projects are profitable. They work. And I don't think we need to be pumping taxpayers' money into those projects unless they're in the areas that we're discussing. I think that makes total sense.
Tony, Rhett, any thoughts?
I'm in agreement. There are some areas that are more in need than others. And Joe's example is a good one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If the demand is there, that's a good thing. Someone will come in and fulfill that demand. So,
I have a question.
Yes, Ann.
The option 1 actually and 2 both refer to rental only apartments, condos, townhouses. Is single family intentionally left out? Because the city Q project that we just discussed is, single family homes, not rentals or condos and so forth necessarily. So was that intentional, or I guess maybe that's a Rachel question.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll look to Rachel on that one.
Yes, it was intentional. We don't provide benefits on for sale property outside of the city of Rochester, and the IDA has participated in the provision of benefits for single family for sale units at the request of the city to meet the city's mission of the choice program.
Right.
But we don't provide a similar benefit of the choice program outside of the city. So this housing policy would apply only to rental that we do throughout the county.
So, but should the single family home ownership, the thing that is the driving, benefit behind the choice program, we shouldn't at least acknowledge that is the one instance where we may participate in, home ownership. This makes it sound like,
Just to make sure I understand your question, so to make it clear in our policy that this criteria does not apply to the choice program?
No, the program we just discussed today, which is the home ownership of single family that is supported by the Q program. Does this option 1 need to refer to that? The rental only is what's throwing me off a little bit. Does it give us the latitude to do the Q program?
Does the city give us the latitude to apply additional?
Our policy.
We can. I mean, that's a question for the board. Do you want to apply? That's up to you. We can apply this criteria to any housing, including the choice program.
No, I don't think that's not what I'm saying. Not to any area or any program, but to allow for the city and the Q program in our policy. Still doesn't make sense?
I think and I'm going to try and restate it. You let me know if I got it right. I think Ann's question is, for a moment, if we adopted this policy, it excludes single-family housing. So if we did adopt this policy, would this constrain us from approving the choice policy that we just talked about earlier? Did I?
Well stated.
Yeah, this would
No,
would
no.
apply to any rental property. It would not apply to the choice program because the choice program is not rental, it's for sale units. So this policy that we're talking about would just apply to rental.
So, Ann, the way I'm taking that is it wouldn't have to go through this rubric to get approval. It would be viewed on its own merits before the board.
So if this is our criteria for housing incentives, we don't need to make any particular mention on single family. In other words, if you were to pick this up, it says, here's our housing incentives. Do we need to at least mention what we do for single family?
Well, we can make it clear in our UTEP that this, if that's the board's desire, applies just to rental. And I don't think we need to do anything outside of that. The choice program stands on its own, separate and apart. And we don't apply any additional criteria at this time, nor would this policy apply to the choice program.
Okay. You know what, just to, in the spirit of, making sure we get to the local labor, Anna, I'm assuming this was just a discussion, just to initiate the discussion. There's no actions.
Right, and the county executive asks that so typically the governance committee would recommend action to be taken by the full board. We're not going to do that in this case. We're just going to have a discussion. And then when the time comes, we will take we'll take action items to the full board. Adam Bello would like us to wait until after the State of the County address to make any formal decisions.
Okay. Robin, did you just capture some of the points we had and some of the modifications?
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
If I didn't, Rachel did, so.
Yeah,
Between the two of us, we got it.
We just wanted to, when this came up and, and Jay said, like, we need some recommendations from staff. So wanted to get some thoughts on paper, let you react and incorporate your comments. And then as Anna said,
no, it's great. I'm glad the discussion is starting.
I'm pleased that, the information that we had asked for, you delivered. You said, see what other counties are doing. Let's probably put more pen to paper on this rather than talking around the issues. So this is terrific.
All right. Before Joe leaves, I would I think it's important we talk about the local labor policy. Anna, should I turn this over to you or Troy or both of you?
So opening this up in my documents here. I am going to let Rachel kind of share the high level bullets here, and then we'll have a discussion regarding the warranty exemption language and bid processing.
So this is a very narrow revision to our policy, and this really only addresses the concern that Troy has brought to our attention over warranty, and adding the requirement that for a warranty exception, the non-local contractor enroll in a New York State certified apprentice program, and we can require proof of that. Again, similar to the housing policy, this is just a start of a very narrow recommendation of a change. I know there's a larger discussion to be had, but this is just specific to that one exception that would allow out of area labor. And I think apprenticeship programs have been raised, and this language is borrowed from some downstate local labor policies that are implementing this apprenticeship requirement. So we looked outside of Monroe County, specifically to the Hudson Valley, Westchester area, at what they were doing.
Troy, you have any, what are your thoughts here?
Well, this is great to begin with, that we're even having this conversation, and why not better train our local people, especially when we see repetitive warranties on companies coming in, I know, 5 times. So it's great to think that we're going to train somebody to alleviate this. But I guess, Rachel, my concern would be, you know, and I know it's a narrow, but should we look into doing this before the bids get out instead of reacting, be proactive? I want to try to avoid somebody getting awarded a project and not have an apprenticeship program and then challenge us and the board about this apprenticeship language. Should it happen before, like when Ann, when you ask for, are you aware of our local labor waiver policies, etc.? Should this be in front of the application and not reactive after, is my concern when I read it. You know, should it be prior to the bids going out? Should this be something that, as the board, we've experienced that companies have not really been transparent? They answer the questions to Ann. Are you aware? Do you anticipate? No, no, no. And I have one, you know, this Amazon thing really is burning me up. When we started at 5, 10, 15%, now entertaining close to 30% of local labor. This is all stuff that the board should have been made aware of in the presentation. So I like this. I like where we're headed. I just asked maybe we should step and take a deeper look of at what time does the applicant accept this warranty in an apprentice language is all. That's it. But I think this will cure our issue on repetitive companies coming in our backyard saying over and over again, we need a waiver.
So I'm just cross-talking with staff here to see. I'm wondering if, you know, as you know, the policy is right contained within our application, and you know, people sign they sign the application, they sign the local labor page. Do they read it? Do they internalize it? Maybe sometimes, maybe a lot of times, no. And I think probably the onus of these types of requirements are going to fall on staff during the application process to call out and have maybe a more formal application interview where we not only provide our comments, because the way that we process applications is we get a draft, we mark it up, we send it back, and maybe the process in order to drive home our local labor policy would be an additional step of staff having a call with the applicants and going over our local labor policy and you know, discussing that with respect to especially a warranty issue. You're going to need to know that and be prepared to discuss your scope of your project and your bids at the board meeting. And that, I think, segues into our bid processing discussion as well of, do we also require that bids get posted to it's like a public builders exchange
plan room.
And so that before they could even, their application is even entertained by the board, they understand that their bids need to be up on the builder's exchange. So before it even goes to the board, potentially the bid is up, the bids are up. And we can introduce some, we can put language in here that makes it clear that, you know, the bids need to be up prior to consideration. And if the project doesn't get approval, then the bid can come out of the plan room. I'm just thinking of, you know, we put bids out and then it doesn't get approved. We can always just pull it down.
How long does it take to go through the certified apprentice, New York State certified apprenticeship program?
I actually don't know. That was one of the things that when staff and I were doing this, we don't have familiarity with this process at all. Troy, I'm not putting you on the spot. I don't know if you do, but we don't know much about the process. And I think at first blush, our reaction was, well, do you just enroll and then that's it? And then by the time the component of the project is done, they're not even, we just don't know how it works in the timing.
So to answer that, I could form an apprenticeship program. I would have to design the curriculum and how many years the apprenticeship program would be for, et cetera. I would then propose it to the Department of Labor. The Department of Labor then reviews it. If it meets their curriculum, they then post it. It's got to be posted for, I think, 45 days. Don't quote me on that, but I'm sure it's more or equal to 45 days for comment. You know, how many people do you graduate would be a question. Where is your facility? How many people can you have in the facility, et cetera? And there would be questions asked on the DOL website for review. And then it would go through a process. So it's not, to answer your question, Ann, it's not a very easy thing to do. It is time consuming, but it's also to meet the New York State certified apprentice program. It's got requirements. There is a process to do that. Do we have a number of union and non-union apprenticeship programs here in Rochester that are recognized by the DOL in New York State? Yes, we do. So it's how do we go about doing that? I'm sure you can go on the DOL website for apprenticeship programs. The application is on that site. But yeah, it's not going to be within our time period. It would have to be established way ahead of time. But that goes back to responsible contractors too, right?
And Troy, are there a sufficient number of these around? Like, you know, if someone says, you know, okay, I'm willing to do this, can we point them in the right direction so we don't have a situation where they come back and say, I can't find an apprentice? Is this, I mean, I guess, can you give me a sense on, hey, are there plenty of apprentices available or programs?
And that's the exciting part about apprenticeships, right? If there's a demand and we need training and get a skill set, that's the scenario I want. Troy, I need 10 apprentices right now. How can we most efficiently meet the demand? Right. So yeah, that's not going to be for any trade. That's not going to be a difficult thing. It's the supply and demand. But I think I could help. I'll help the board if you would like me to get that application. I do have. We can make that happen.
So we're learning. We're learning with you right now. So Troy, for the apprenticeship program, it may not necessarily be, let's say it's for Gyp Creek and it's a warrant, or I don't know, whatever, pick it. The apprenticeship program may not necessarily need to be our requirement of an apprenticeship program. It could be just they need to enroll in an apprenticeship program, but it may not have anything to do with the type of construction or installation related to the warranty. It could just, they just need to be a part of an apprenticeship program. Am I asking that right?
So I would say no. I would say that that apprenticeship program would be specific to the process that you're talking about.
Right.
In the gypcrete world, it would be a carpenter, a laborer, and a mason. They would all claim that that is part of their building envelope, if you will. You wouldn't want an electrician applying gypcrete, if that makes sense.
Right.
So this apprenticeship program, and that's why in the past, when I've asked for lockers, for floor, epoxy floor applications, for tip-ups, what is your warranty curriculum that you need locally for us to train to make sure we're safe and doing the process efficiently? And then I would be able to go back to the building trades and say, who does epoxy floors? Originally, I thought it was the painter. As we went on, I learned it is the bricklayer. So, yeah, every apprenticeship program is going to be specific to what kind of work we're talking about.
Right. Okay. All right.
In our world, we call it jurisdictionals. Who claims the work?
Okay.
And that's overseen by the National Building Trades out of Washington.
No, that makes sense. Like gypcrete's a great example. We want to get people here trained to do that. So eventually people don't have to bring in Henderson from Syracuse. And that's how many times I've heard the exception that I have that committed to memory.
They're not going to be there. They're not. Sorry, we're just trying to get a better understanding ourselves here. So like take the epoxy floor, for example. They may not
can't see you, Robin. We can't see you.
We want to see you.
So for the epoxy floor, for example, there may not currently be an existing apprenticeship program in New York State, correct?
No, there is. You have Local 3 here that trains epoxy floor application.
Okay, so we get a warranty exception for epoxy floor. And in order to get the exemption, the contractor, subcontractor would need to enroll in Local 3's program.
Or you're getting wide here. So that epoxy floor contractor was out of New Jersey.
Right.
So if they had an apprenticeship program in New Jersey that's recognized, we should probably work along with that, in my opinion. I don't know what the end game here. I think what we're trying to do here is to get local people to participate with the out-of-town, out-of-state contractor in that specific field, to put local people to get their warranty, to be certified with that business's procedures. You know, that's the loop we got to tighten up here. We had, and after this last one that we had, I want to say Farmer John, we had 6 contractors willing to bid that work. But because this New Jersey outfit came in and the ANSI number to their product was specific to that company, sort of like they held the patent on the product, they were only going to allow their people to work on it.
So how do
But
we fix that?
at the end of the day, the apprenticeship program would be, you apply it this, the temperature has to be this, the moisture has to be this. Your safety, you need a respirator. Safety, you need to have clothing and not get it on your skin. Other than that, just because the product's name changed and the ANSI numbers have changed, it shouldn't be specific to, no, we need a local labor waiver because of warranty. And that's the loop you're trying to close right there, if that makes sense.
I also think that it's our, at least for me, it's the to understand the goal, which is ultimately to have this agency participate in the training of local labor, understanding that our immediate efforts probably won't pay dividends for years, right? Because we're going to start making our contribution to getting people trained would be this requirement, understanding that if we may not have certified contractors for quite some time.
Right.
And that's going to be the challenge, is if the
Right.
contractor
But-
holds the patent to the product.
Right.
Same thing with lockers, same thing
But
with.
the goal being, we're making an effort locally to get people trained, and with the hope that someday they're on those lists, that infamous lists of certified installers.
And let's go back
Troy,
to the
you made
original.
a comment a little.
Right.
Troy,
So let's
you
go
made
back
a
to the
comment
original
a little.
conversation with, let's say we offered this apprenticeship language and we put in a side letter. But if you were to hire a local apprentice and put it on the project, and instead of making that go through the whole loop here, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's just say we have a local apprentice that is trained to handle this safely and to be a cheaper resource for you instead of paying journeyman rate as an apprentice rate. And maybe we can increase it, an incentive to say, hey, if you're willing to put apprentices on your job, we'll you do this, we'll do this. I don't know if we have to go. I like the full part, but I think we also can add a little more to that, just to not pressure a company to jump through everything. Just say, hey, wait a minute. There is an apprenticeship program that trains epoxy floors here in Rochester. Here's a pool. Did you call that entity up to see if they have a labor available? And,
Right.
and then in hopes that, no, I've applied this product before, this is what I had to do. This is my certificate. And the next time it happens, they have somebody here local they could call,
So it
Sorry
could be it, and then I'll let Rhett speak. I just want to make sure that staff and I are understanding, because ultimately, we gotta make sure we understand this and speak Troy's language. So it could be the hiring of local apprentice or the enrollment in the apprenticeship program. And then we just need to make sure we have the resources and get them to Brian particularly, so he knows who to contact to get an apprentice on the job. Or two, or whatever. I mean, I guess that's another thing to talk about, is depending on the scope, if it's 10 workers and we say you got to have, a percentage or one apprentice or whatever. I mean, if they've got 50, I think out-of-state workers, I think it's fair to say you got to have more than one apprentice on the job, depending on what the local availability is. But, Allison made a great point, is that it will allow us to be proactive without, straddle the line of not slowing the project down too, right? We can get an apprentice on, that's quick and easy, hopefully.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense that eventually, if this happens enough, some company will say, hey, we've got some people that are experienced with it. We'll go through the certification process. Troy, is that
How
fair?
long would that take to go through that process?
I think it would depend on the product.
For example, and the floors would have been about a 12-hour class.
Wow.
It'd have been 2 days. We could have got the training out of the way. A lot of the other trades have shared. I'll go back to the tip-ups. There was a 16-hour safety crane and derricks hoisting and rigging class, along with OSHA, a class to stay safe around that kind of dangerous situation, to be blunt. But everybody, that's what makes the apprentice programs unique. And prove to us it's in your curriculum. Prove to us you train it. That's what's going to get you certified. I'm sorry to jump in front of you, Rhett.
No problem. So I'm not sure if this goes along with the apprenticeship program, but Troy, in the past, you've talked about, specifically regarding warranties, you've talked about do they have to bring all their people? Can't you use some of the local labor along with your company's people for warranties? Is that related to the apprenticeship program as well, or is that a whole different discussion?
So you're going to find, Rhett, that a lot of these crews, not everybody is certified. Not everybody's going to hold that certificate. The foreman supervisor overseeing and being the quality control will tap somebody on the shoulder and said, hey, wait a minute, aren't you gonna, for the epoxy floor, there's dirt in that pile, you didn't vacuum that up, you're not gonna put that over the top of it, stop right now, get that taken care of, that kind of thing. Yeah, you're hitting it right on the head, Rhett. That would be something that I would like, and the community would probably like to see more. Yeah, that's fine. You have a certificate for your warranty, but I find it difficult to challenge warranty on floors.
How do we, Troy, how do we address that particular issue in our, you know, when a company's coming in and want to do the work, how do we address that up front so that we're not dealing with things after the fact, after the work has started?
That's over my pay scale, but I would say, why wouldn't we put on an extra incentive if in fact that conversation comes in to play? All right, you have your warranty for your work. Okay. If you were to hire an apprentice, are you willing to hire an apprentice? Can we increase the incentive? Or could we put something, a tag along with the incentive? If you are willing to.
So Troy, are we talking about maybe a sliding scale as it relates to percentage of local labor? How much incentive somebody's, a business is going to get based on the local, I mean, if we incentivize it, I mean, is that an answer? It goes along with what you're saying.
You know what, Rhett, jumping in, I don't think we should incentivize someone to use an apprentice. I mean, I think before we give an exemption on local labor for a warranty, we can say, here are some things that you need to exhaust. One is that you can use an apprentice, but I think the other thing, and you're bringing up a great point, is, you know what, can you use a portion of local labor as part of the crew? So that, you need to tell us it, like right now, and the way I see it is someone comes in, they say, hey, I've got a warranty issue. It comes before us and they say they need to use out-of-town labor because of a warranty issue. Before we grant that, Brian LaFountain should say, okay, well, let me understand that. And on the lockers, hey, out of this 8-person crew, can you use 2 people locally? We'll grant you the exemption for warranty, but at least we got 2 out of 8. And that's the way I would see it, rather than I'm going to give you additional incentive. Or I grant you the exemption, I want you to exhaust these other possibilities. You need to explain to me why you can't use a couple of folks on your crew. That's the way I would see it.
So Troy, back to you. Would one of the questions we'd ask is how many, so you've got a warranty. Would a question we want to ask regarding a warranty and possible exemptions are how many people will be on site that are skilled versus, and I may be using the wrong term, skilled versus not skilled regarding the warranty?
To be the devil's advocate, what if the contractor says, I can't take the risk of having somebody that's an apprentice on the job site? Troy.
I mean, everybody's got to have a succession plan, Tony, and if we're going to incentivize and we really want to address employing people in our community.
No, I get it. I'm just saying you got to be ready for some comments from out of town contractors that are warranting things. That's all I'm saying.
Well, and as a contractor, Tony, you know in the past that when every project gets completed, automatically New York state laws, there's a 1-year warranty on that construction, right? Jay, help me out here. I mean, that,
it varies to the
Varies
trade. Yeah.
depend on, yeah.
yeah, but on average, you know, the mechanicals and the floor and all that, it's given a 1-year warranty out of the gate. That's just part of doing business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, Tony, it just seems like this warranty thing's just another way,
Loophole? Yeah.
you know, to get to the bottom line, right?
Hey, Tony,
Well,
so you know what? Let me.
I'm all for. I'm all for it. Let's look. Let's try to look ahead and see what's coming up, and take one job at a time and see if we can train somebody ahead of time.
But I mean, to answer your question,
participate.
Tony, if someone says, if a contractor comes in and says, I can't take the risk, we need to understand that. What risk are they referring to? You know, and
Yeah, and then you're getting.
Yeah, but I think
then you're
that's what
getting-
Brian should be doing rather than just the blanket. He should be, you know, peeling a few of the layers back. And
Right, I agree. But then you're going to get into somebody saying something about insurance.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, and we, you know, we can look into that and handle that on a case by case, but I mean,
yeah,
I think, you know, I think
I'm
if
all
we
for
can get an
doing something.
apprentice or even part of the crew, I think it makes sense. The other thing is, as part of the bid processing, I would also make sure that the bids, that we put in a criteria that the bids must be up there certain number of days in advance.
To give everybody a chance. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, like typically you want to have the bids up there 15 days before they're due. Or Troy, if you've got another time frame, you know, you can't post it 24 hours before bids are due. And the other thing that I would have them include in this bid, and you know, you put this thought in my head, Troy, is if there's a warranty, that should be included in there. Like, hey, you need to be certified by, you know, Acme company. Because if it is something as simple as a 12-hour course and a local contractor knows that 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance, they may be able to do that and get certified and actually submit a bid. You know, I want to give them every opportunity to do whatever it takes to be able to compete.
So Troy, what would be your first step so we can move ahead with this?
Just the language and getting to add it in when Ann asks, are you aware of our local labor waiver policy? And, you know, that to give us, you're hitting it on the head, Jay, because then the contractors are going to start reaching out to their workforce and they're going to say, hey, can you make this happen? In the sheet metal world, I can make a phone call and I have strike force training available. So whatever I need to get trained, I could make it happen in any, you know, give me a week and I can more than likely 80% of the time, I will be able to get somebody here to have that strike force training done.
Yeah, that's what we want.
That's the goal. So,
yeah. So Rachel, next steps here. I mean, is this part of a discussion, and based on this, are we going to go back and revise this language and then
Yeah.
take one more crack at it, and then hopefully we can put it up for vote and get it changed?
Yeah, and if you notice, we are paying attention, but we're coming up with ideas as we're listening. And we've got some ideas that might be very helpful with this, and it might be one little tweak, and we'll talk about it, but we'll revise the language and come back to you with what our I think it's simple processing ideas that will force applicants to do all of the things that we're talking about up front before they get final approval. But yes, we'll come back to you.
I think I'd like to know, you know, what the timing looks like on that too. I mean, how long are we going to be holding up people? You know, if they're like an Amazon trying to move forward as quickly as possible, they've got a fair amount of warranty work and train people, and you have to have that specific training to do that work, and to have them step back and say, oh, they have to go through a apprenticeship program, and they've got to train X number of local people to do this warranty work. I'm just having trouble visualizing how that's going to happen without really holding up some of these. I'm certainly supportive of Troy, very supportive, but I'm just, how much of a time commitment is involved for the developer to make this happen. And a lot of that work may be very, very unique, like robotics and so on.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because you know what? Even though there's some people upset about Amazon, the bully in town, I think that it's opened up this discussion. Maybe it's discussion that should have been had a lot earlier. And the more transparent we are, and the more we address these things, thanks to Amazon, just moving in and taking over, doing things that maybe are against the law that they shouldn't be doing. We need to, maybe our process and in the questioning. I mean, I read something that Troy wrote that when some of the workers that were on a project site for demolition weren't legal, it delayed their job by 2 weeks. So I think that with the expertise, some of the things that Troy's talked about and what we're learning from the way Amazon operates, I think that we can make some changes that will be beneficial to projects in the future as well as now.
And you're hitting it right on the head. So this is my obstacle. This is me right now today. Amazon has not released their bids, and they haven't shared to the awarded companies a schedule. I have no idea how many mechanical people I am going to need to man the job. And we asked them for this, Ann, last Friday. They refused to share with us the schedule. So right now, I cannot get metal. I have 9 to 12 week lead time to get product here in Rochester. And the longer they withhold what contractor's going to give them, because there's 800,000 pounds of metal need to be ordered for this. And I don't even know what the contractor needs to get that PO rolling. So they're hurting our process by giving us a fair shake of trying to man and get prepared for what we got to do to make their schedule happen. We've put out the olive branch, and it's their game that they're playing, and it's not a good game for the community. It really isn't.
Troy, aren't they hurting themselves by not releasing that stuff?
Yeah, Tony, but the problem is they've got schedule penalties on this. There's the penalties for not meeting schedule are so severe. That's why some of our Rochester contractors didn't even bid the work. The ones that did bid the work are our big boys, and that I would hate to see us not make schedule and Amazon actually enact penalties, because as an IDA, that's counterintuitive to our goal here, right? And I don't know who can pressure Amazon to get this expedited. They want to hang metal in June, and I'm not going to even have it on. I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm not. That's the truth. So until
it's being done on purpose.
We don't know. I hope they're not.
And that's non-warranty work that you're talking about.
No, there is some warranty stuff over there. There is some
steel.
There is some unavailability of people local that do the work. We're working through that. Like I said, we've already talked about some of the warranties which we're to be anticipating. And they're slowly trickling in. I'm working through some of them, but I apologize for the last month's meeting, but when it was discussed about a possibility of a umbrella waiver, my fear is going forward that what we do here sets precedence for any other project coming down the pipe. And this is the language that's going to help tighten this all up, which is it took this project to get here, but this is all what's going to help in the future. So if we're going to put community money to a project, then damn it, you're going to play by our rules. And we have policy and procedures in place. Don't try to manipulate them. Don't try to loophole them. This is what's in place. This is what needs to be done. And let's work together and do the right thing. We're all here in construction to make money and to get the community stronger with jobs. And that starts right out of the ground in construction and right into what the business does from there after it's completed.
So, Troy, let me ask you a quick question. Do you think that what they're not supplying you their timeline and what you need, you think it's a malicious or incompetent?
I'm going to be careful to say because I don't want to upset anybody more than I already have. This is by design. This is completely by design. We learned Friday that they are going to simultaneously be erecting steel on Shepherd Road as they will on Manitou. The iron workers right now were in town last week. Rochester does not have a iron worker workforce of 100 plus because we're not putting skyscrapers up one a year.
Right.
So
And
this
they
is
delay their project schedule. Are you saying that they should slow down the project schedule to accommodate the workforce?
no, but it's done. This is all being done just to their point. Rochester is not going to be able to supply manpower. They have 100% local labor waiver with their IDA. We're going to exploit this. So it's going to literally be impossible for the iron worker to do both jobs at the same time. And I was happy to see the iron worker had an ad out in the paper. They're going to try to exhaust for anybody that wants to hang from the clouds and hang steel. God bless you.
You just keep saying
It's an art and it's not something that once the steel's up, they move on. They go to bridges and highways. So
So
Joe, I guess I'll chime in. It's not incompetence. I don't know if it's malicious, but it's definitely, these guys, they put these up before. They know what they're doing. And Anna, I don't think we shouldn't be delaying anything. We're just asking for a fair shake. And I just don't think that with what we've seen, it's hard for a rational person to say that we're given a fair shake.
Agreed.
So, but just to, in the interest of time here.
I think Joe wanted to say something.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Joe.
Let me share something with the board. So, I go to Florida in the wintertime and I go to a place called Collier County. I mean, maybe you're familiar with it, maybe you're not, but nonetheless, they did an Amazon project there, similar in size to ours, even a little bit bigger. And I was fortunate enough to meet somebody on the board who took me there. And their projects, and they're 99% done. So I wanted to see what the county gave them, what they did, how much local labor did they use, did they honor their commitment of the percentage of local labor they told them, on and on and on. So I was fortunate enough to go there. I got to see the site. I met with one of the gentlemen on the IDA board, and I was taken back by, they gave Amazon the property, plus all kinds of other incentives. And again, take this in the spirit it's given. I'm not saying this is what we should do. I just, whenever I do anything, and I don't care what it is, I want to see what somebody else did and did it work. So I went there and they used they told them they were going to use 40% local labor. They ended up using closer to like 48% local labor, he said, because they watched it pretty close. And the project's almost done. And I wanted to understand the rationale, because they gave them a huge parcel of land. And if you know anything about property down there, property's super expensive down there, especially in that area. And he said, look, we need blue collar jobs here. He said, the only blue collar jobs here in this county are in the travel industry, right? So it has been decimated by COVID, and even when it wasn't a COVID period, it wasn't enough. So that's why we incentivize them to come here, because we want those jobs, and I think it's going to end up like they're going to end up with like 1,200 jobs. So that was interesting to me. So, and the other part was that whatever percentage they told them with local labor, they honored it. They did a little better than that. So I don't think it's the same contractor that's doing our project here. But at least that was my experience there. And I thought it would be helpful for you to know that.
Good.
Joe,
good
that number's
homework.
pretty close to Troy's 50%.
Mhm.
Yeah, right. And they told them, the Amazon general contractor told them we're only going to use 40, and they ended up using closer to 50. And he said that, and again, I think that labor force there, Troy, would be similar to ours. There's no skyscrapers going up in Naples. So, I think they ran into, and I think our labor force would probably be a little stronger than what they have down there, would be my guess. But nonetheless, that was the situation. And unfortunately I have to go, but I just want to share this with you. Look, we have policies in place. So if Amazon comes to us and says, hey, this is proprietary, or this is an issue that we have to use this, and we're going to commit to you. What did they commit to us? 60%, I think, Anna, is that right?
Yeah, they're coming to us saying that they can get to 70% local labor. They want a blanket for like a blanket waiver at 30% with the board.
Okay. So, and I'm just giving you my position on it. If they came to us and said, look, we're going to use 70%, I'd be pleased with that. Because if we get whatever we get in construction jobs, and then we gain however many jobs we're going to get, and it's a large number of jobs from the facility, and those jobs could go on in perpetuity, I think I'm all in favor of that. What I'm not in favor of is if you make it too difficult for them. That facility that I looked at in Collier County was supposed to be built in Fort Myers, and they just couldn't put the deal together in Fort Myers, so they lost it. So I would hate to see us lose those blue collar jobs that we so desperately need. If they're going to make a commitment to us, and that commitment is, look, we're going to use 70% local labor, I'd be good with that. And I think anybody that would look at this situation and say, okay, they're going to provide us 1,000 or 1,500 jobs or 1,000 jobs or 800 jobs. And in our situation, and they're going to use 70% of our local labor to build that facility, I don't have an issue with that at all.
Well,
if you've ever been in, and let me finish. If you've ever been in one of those facilities, you'd see some of the uniqueness of the construction, and it would make sense to me. They showed me one instance where there was this huge conveyor belt, and it had nothing to do with the general contractor. The manufacturer of the conveyor belt, they have to install it, and it just is what it is. You want our conveyor belt, we have to install it. So that was one example that he gave me. There was another example too with some loading piece where the truck came in and the boxes were loaded into a truck. So, the company that manufactured that piece said, you want it, we install it, which stands to reason. They not only do they want to make money on the piece, they want to make money on the installation. So I don't have an issue with any of that. And after seeing what I saw, I was impressed, and I thought they did a good job. And again, I don't think that contractor, as a matter of fact, I know it's not. That contractor is not the same that we have here.
So Joe, if in fact that we do a blanket umbrella waiver, we then now have to go back into Brian and Kevin's guidelines and policies. They already have expressed how difficult under the policy that we have of how they're going to monitor the job site. So at any given time, you could walk on that site and have 70% local labor. But and there's never going to be the next day you could have 30 carpenters that are out of the area, and you'll out of 100 you're at 70%. Now the next day you're going to have electricians over there, and 30% of those guys are going to be from out of the area. There's going to be no way to monitor and have any control over the site. So this is where I want to ask the board to consider treading very lightly on an umbrella waiver. We, the building trades and labor, will not intentionally, if there's no labor to be had and we have to get out of town people here to man it to meet schedule, we're going to protect our contractors to make it happen. But we have to have some skin in the game as a board to understand that, yes, you did go through the process. One phone call is all it takes from Brian to say, Troy, you need 30 sheet metal workers there Monday. Can you make this happen with our Monroe County labor? Brian, let me get back to you. I'll get back to him by the end of the day and say, I got 20. The other 10 are going to come from Syracuse or Buffalo. But you got to give local labor a chance to get to that number. If you put an umbrella on them right now, it's going to be the Wild West. And you might as well tell Brian and Kevin to not even go visit the site, because it's going to be irrelevant. You're not going to have anything. And if that's the way we're going to go, and everybody wants this going in the future, I think we're going to have heavy damage on it. Let them go through their process. Let them tell me right now who's got the mechanicals on this. They've had this bid for now going on 12 weeks. They've known who has awarded this job. They just won't handle over the PO. That's wrong. If we're going to play together as a team and you're going to use $41 million of taxpayer money, we better be conscious of what we're doing here. Joe, I agree with you totally. Florida is a right to work state. New York is not. If you're
Understood.
If you're going to come
Understood.
in,
But keep this in. But keep this in mind, Troy.
Just make them do what we got in policy right now. That's all.
I get it. So I want to share something else for you. So they have local labor policy there, which I wasn't aware of. And they also have probably less ability, and at least in that, they were just totally unprepared for a project that size. They put the load on the contractor. You're going to prove to me what you're using local labor. You're going to prove to me what you're not using local labor. I'm not, because here's what the guy said to me. He said, we would have needed, 5 people here to figure out what they were doing because the job was so huge. Exactly what you're saying, Troy. But so I don't think you put that all on our back. I think you put it on the contractor's back and say, look, we're willing to do it. If you want a 30% blanket, then you show us how you're going to govern it. You show us how you're going to make us comfortable and prove to us that it works, because it's not going to be the Wild West. And I don't have the ability to put 3, 4, and 5 people there. And I'm not going to bury the staff that we already have. And I apologize for background noise because I had to get in the car because I'm very, very late. So I think there's got to be an intelligent way that we can force them to monitor what's going on there and show it to our people so that it isn't the Wild West, and it's not like, you know, for lack of a better term, it's a complete gong show, and it works. But I can tell you that there's no way that anybody convinced me they can't do that, and there's no way that Monroe County can afford to see this project leak. So that's my only concern. And again, Troy, please take this in the spirit it's given. I use 99% of what I do with local labor, and I'm all for it. This is a little bit different of an animal, as I saw firsthand. I don't know if anybody's ever walked through one of those facilities, but it's different than anything I've ever seen. And those jobs are crucial to this county. Crucial. That I don't care how much money you pump into this economy. I don't care how much government TARP money you throw at it. If people don't have a place to work, it doesn't work, period. The economy doesn't work.
Joe, thank you, Joe. Let's just try. Thanks, Joe. I just want to try to wrap up with some positive movement. Troy.
Yeah, so coming back to why we gathered here, which is to review the local labor and to summarize. Rachel, Robin, you guys are going to modify some language for the apprenticeship, and the idea of can we get, if there's a warranty item, a partial local labor in there as well before we give a warranty waiver. And you'll shoot that back out for us to review, and we'll set up another meeting.
Yes.
And is there any other topics, any other business?
I think Troy, you're hot on the path chasing them, and hopefully you get some responses back so that it can help you.
I think the homework done by Joe too is helpful. That's an interesting perspective, having just been to an Amazon site, and how were they treated by the local IDA. It's all good information.
And Troy, if you ever, if you want to talk outside of the meeting, please feel free to call me. I'll share with you what I saw. And I'm happy to talk with you any way to help in any way I can.
No, the whole, and I'm going to share with you guys. I went there Friday. I met Trammell Crow, and right off the bat, his demeanor was terrible, and I had to slow him down and say, Kurt, hold on a minute. I represent sheet metal and I sit on the IDA board. What you are talking to right now is a group of 4 guys that are problem solvers. We're not here to create a problem. We want a fair shake. We want to exhaust all our avenues to put as many local people to work on this project as possible. And we're going to help you make that happen. We're not here to create a problem. So let's stop that right now. And it fell on deaf ears. A lot of I. And back to your point, Joe, this guy, I did this project in Tennessee. I've done this one in Texas. I'm here, I'm going to bang it out, and I'm going to get the heck out of here. Well, that's fine. We're all here to help you do that. But you're going to exhaust all your resources. Local labor is on high alert right now. They are all going to make this happen as best they can to put as many local people on board they can. And when we can't, I have asked them, the building trades, to just say, when you get to that point that you're not going to be able to man this project, could you write a letter to COMIDA saying, at this time, I do not have any more resources. I've exhausted my resources. But I do, what's frustrating to, and everybody is, I guess, I gotta drive this home. We don't know what we don't know if they're not gonna give us the schedule. If they were to give us the schedule, we could be having this conversation and we can plan this and be involved and be problem solvers. They're playing hardball with us and they're playing hardball with our county executive. I don't have a problem with a private company coming in here and building in Rochester because it's what's going to work and what we need. Amazon's going to do what they're going to do. We should not be gun shy at the threats from Amazon, by no means. We want to work together with them. Give us the opportunity to exhaust that. To do an umbrella labor waiver right now would be unjust to the rest of the trades. You didn't give us our fair shake. And as a board, we shouldn't be we should follow our policies and procedures. I will influence the expedition of, no, if you don't have labor guys, write me the letter. I will give it to the director. We'll move on here. But what I don't like and what I don't want to see is the abuse. We've already seen abuse over there on this project so far. It's already happening on the demolition phase, a $4 million demolition phase. And Amazon wants to threaten that they'll pull out anytime after the demolition, which is 3/4 of the way done right now, mind everybody. We put a 500 full-time employee clause to this. Amazon cannot walk away without being responsible. Rachel helped me out with having to reassume the taxes over there if they do pull out. So they're not going to readily run, is what my point being here.
That's a great job.
Well, they, right, Rachel makes the point that they had to sign off on the creation of the 500 jobs. I'll just reiterate a point I made a while back. Amazon's listed as the tenant and doesn't own the property outright. It's the ownership is through a capital partner. And I learned early on that Amazon typically assumes very little risk throughout these projects, the early stages of the projects, until it's time to hand over the keys and occupy the facility outright. So just something to keep in mind, that they are known to kind of drag you along for a while and get formally engaged in some of these, taking on capital expenses, et cetera. But they still could walk away from the deal. But you're right, Troy. I don't see that as being likely in our case.
This is going to go. We want it to go. Everybody does. And we want to be given a fair shake to make sure that we can employ as many local people here as we possibly can. And to plant another seed, I did have a conversation with a customer on Joseph Avenue the other day. And their question to me was, Troy, if all these jobs are out on Manitow Road, how are my unemployed people that don't have vehicles and don't have transportation going to get out to Manitow Road to go to work 12 hours, get an hour there and an hour home? And how long do you think they're going to be willing to do this and for $15 an hour? So this was a person right there on Joseph Avenue that's in the heart of a poverty initiative, sharing me her concerns about this project. And if we're really going to make it happen, we need to start. I heard transportation earlier today in the conversation.
Troy, we in the administration share that concern, and I convened a call last week with our Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Rochester Works, and our Deputy County Executive for Health and Human Services. And we're working on a strategy whereby not only are we going to start propping up and supporting programs to get people in underserved pockets of our community ready to apply for these jobs, the jobs at Amazon, but also we're going to be working with RTS to ensure that there's regular access to these sites at all hours, because my anticipation that this will be 24/7 operation, and not just like drop you off at the tech park and then you have to walk all the way, to the facility itself, but last mile transportation. It's not really in our control necessarily. It's the transit authority, but we're working on that.
Yeah,
That's terrific, Anna. That's
Yeah.
great.
that's huge. That's a big, this individual is a supporter of young people in development in theater. And she goes, Troy, sometimes after I get done with class, I have to sit here for an hour and a half to wait for a bus to go by on Joseph Avenue. And these are 16-year-old and younger children that she's dealing with. She goes, I can't leave them there. I can't do that. And, she brought a good point up to me as we got a lot of work here to do if we're going to really make it all happen. But I appreciate you guys putting the time together. This is exciting. We're moving forward. And as everybody says, I left it better than when I got here, right?
Yeah.
We want to do. With that, appreciate everybody. Appreciate the really the lively discussion. Some good points were brought up, and we know next steps. So we'll adjourn the meeting, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.